All right, guys, there's no header for this one. There is no hook for this one. This one was rough for me, so we're going to go ahead and get right into it. Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Fort, and we are here for a short story discussion, which will appear in two playlists here on the channel. Number one being the short story discussion playlist. Number two being the Ernest Hemingway read-along series, short story by short story. We are going through the Ernest Hemingway canon, the entire Fincavigia edition. This video will have three sections: a So What Happened section, a literary criticism section, where we talk about the literary things going on in this short story, which was very difficult for me, and then we will get to the writer's corner, where I have a few more notes than I have for the lit crit section. So, what happened? Well, Wine of Wyoming by Ernest Hemingway. Our narrator is an author visiting the Fontaines, and while he's sitting with the madam, two men pull up looking for Sam and beer, but she turns them away because they are drunk. This is, after all, Prohibition era, and they're not supposed to have any beer. Later, he has dinner with the family also. There's a lot of alcohol there because the Fontaines make beer and wine. They're in Wyoming during a hot summer. Pardon me. Also, their son loves a girl, a Native American girl, who does not cook for him, who does not clean after him, and she has let herself go. The Fontaines are not particularly fond of America, and they're using Hemingway here is using the Native American girl as a commentary on that. The narrator has dinner with the Fontaines while the madam is complaining about books later, and Fontaine has to remind her that the narrator is a writer. They talk about hunting and how Americans treat Catholics and how they treat alcohol, and how the Fontaines hope that the first Catholic running for president of the United States will win. He will not. Then the narrator goes on a shooting trip and stops to see the Fontaines. Somewhere along the line, we are supposed to recognize that the narrator is there with his wife, and I didn't get that on the first two readings of the short story. Sort of towards the end of the first reading of the short story. Then, on the second reading of the short story, it became apparent to me that this hunting trip was different than I had originally read it. Then, the narrator says that he and his wife will be back for dinner, but the rest of the day goes poorly for our narrator and his wife, and they have to leave the next day, so they do not go to dinner that night. But they do stop by the next day, and they learn that Fontaine had recovered some of his wine to have at dinner the previous night, and he drank all three bottles. So Fontaine is struggling. Hold on, I lost myself. I apologize. He drank all three bottles and says he'll get more, so he takes our narrator with him to his son and daughter-in-law's house, but it's locked. Then Fontaine's key does not work in the lock, so he tries to break in, but there are people watching, so our narrator stops Fontaine. Fontaine is devastated that he has to send his friend away without giving him some of the wine that he and his family had made. The narrator seems upset too, as he casts doubt on everything that the Fontaines had hoped for on he and his wife's return drive. The literary criticism section of this story, I believe, breaks down thusly. Law does not equal morality. Morality does not equal law abiding. These characters all present as likable. We're supposed to like everyone in this short story, except for maybe the Fontaine's son. Still, they have no qualms about drinking illegal alcohol, about making illegal alcohol, etc. Though Madame Fontaine does complain about some morality involved. She says that the Americans don't like Catholics, they don't treat Catholics well, and that the Americans get too drunk. She says that America has too many churches and, in effect, too much alcohol. They overindulge in the alcohol. And our narrator says that they want to get sick so they'll know they're drunk. we have to wonder if this is a correlation with religion. They want to overindulge in religion. That's why there's so many churches, so they feel close to God. Overindulgence seems to be one of the sort of guiding lights for this short story, because the Madame Fontaine will talk all this stuff about the Americans drinking too much. But then when Fontaine had brought home 3 bottles of wine and his friend didn't show up, he went ahead and drank them all anyway. We are left to wonder, I think, if there is a correlation between disappointment and indulgence. Disillusionment and indulgence. Fontaine seems to have drank all of the wine because his friend didn't show up. Is this a criticism on America and Americans' disillusionment with previous ideals? There's also, I think, some bit of commentary on indulgence and restriction. So if we are to take the indulgence, and Americans overindulge in alcohol, despite the fact that it is illegal, and then have to sort of corral themselves into believing that they're not bad people, so they indulge in religiosity, in church, etc. But then, if that is the correlation, Catholicism is a more restrictive religion than many iterations of Christianity. So there seems to be, to me, some contradiction there as well. Normally, I think with Hemingway's writing, you can snuff these things out and you can really get a handle on things. I was not able really to get there with this story. But there's also, if we're talking about indulgence, the point to be made that the Native American girl is indulging and gaining weight. So the question of indulgence seems to be very big here, which is ironic because the Catholic Church sold indulgences during the Middle Ages. You could buy your way out of the sins that you had committed, which the Fontaines are Catholic and not from America, so they are bringing their indulgence selling religion to the United States and criticizing the way that their indulgence selling religion is treated by an indulgent society. So I think that there is a lot going on there, and I couldn't cut through all of it, but that is what I have for the literary criticism portion of this video. Now on to the writer's corner. What can we learn from this short story as writers ourselves? Why, in the name of anything anyone finds holy, is there so much of another language in this short story? Hemingway does like to pepper in different languages to his works. I guess you could probably see that coming, especially if the characters in question are from someplace else. But there are short stories completely written in other countries that are in English. He uses English through the whole short story for characters from another country in another country. So for me, that takes me out of the short story when it happens too often. When you have to start saying, okay, well, what does this word mean? And looking it up, because we're very fortunate today that we can look it up. When Hemingway was writing, no one had a smartphone to be able to translate a line of his text. So as a writer, I think that it's just a bad practice to get into so much of another religion or other language in your stuff. The Madam is an interesting character. So she is described as looking like Mrs. Claus, but she is hard-nosed with drunks. She's very nice with our narrator, but she dislikes reading and readers. So this is a This is an interesting character, and I think that Hemingway is very good at this, making characters that do have contradictions, writing characters that do have interesting likes and dislikes, writing characters that are contradictions in themselves because of the things that they believe versus the things that they do. That is not a concrete thinking method, right? So these characters are obviously real, they're obviously three-dimensional, and they're obviously sort of explaining things to them in a way, explaining things to themselves in a way that is different from the way that you or I would recognize something, which creates an interesting sort of dynamic for the reader because they have to parse out, why does this character feel this way but contradict themselves, right? And that goes right down to her looks, like Mrs. Claus being um, a softer character, but the madam here is very hard nosed and is very almost masculine in the way that she will deal with people and shoo them away, but very soft and receptive to our narrator. Just like many real people are. They have that in them that they will, there's a barrier they put up. And once you're inside the barrier, you're inside the barrier. When you're outside the barrier, you are not inside the barrier. And then the last thing that we have here in this short story that we can learn as writers is that this is not a conventional conflict. This is an unconventional conflict. The conflict here at the end of the story that has to be resolved and is unresolved is that Fontaine wants some of his liquor to give to his friend, and he cannot get it. It's his liquor. He can't get to it. This is an interesting and unconventional conflict. Nobody's getting in a fist fight. There's no portal in the sky like a comic book movie. This is a character that really wants something and cannot access that thing. That is more interesting than many conflicts that are more conventional, and it gives the reader an opportunity to see into what it is that these characters are. So if it's just a fist fight, somebody got mad. If it's someone trying to get to his liquor, getting to that liquor is getting to that alcohol is, it tells us about their relationship because Fontaine really wants to provide something physical to our narrator. It tells us about their value structure. They're valuing that liquor, they're valuing the alcohol above almost the time that they have spent with each other. And it tells us something about the time period as well. They can't get the liquor. They can't be too obvious about trying to get it because they are in Prohibition times. So anyway, guys, those are the thoughts that I have on Wine of Wyoming by Ernest Hemingway. If you like or appreciate this sort of thing, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Hemingway lovers if you find yourself here by chance but not design. Literature is the, I almost said liquor. Literature is the only thing that I talk about on this channel, so consider hitting the subscribe button to stick around for more. And as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.